It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, how's it going? It's Thursday, April 27th, and this is the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. We're on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So what is happening on this wonderful and awesome Thursday? We've got current news from around the world. It's Q&A Thursday, and of course we have sermons in the sky. Okay, everyone, how are you doing today? It is Thursday. And for me, I am currently in the San Francisco airport. It's like 1:35 a.m. in the morning. I still have, I just got off my flight a few hours ago. I went to get something to eat, and I'm still on Malaysian time, so it's like 4:30 p.m. right now in Malaysia, so I am not tired at all, but I'm slowly getting tired for some reason. I guess because it's all dark, but I'm in the airport basically alone. Like there are some people here and there that are sleeping, waiting for their next flight. My flight's not for another 7 hours, so I'm kind of stuck here. Probably going to get a little bit of rest a bit later, but I thought to myself, as long as I'm awake, I might as well just do my podcast while I'm here in the airport. So good to see everyone. I think I'm going to do a little bit, of a different format, and you can tell my nose is clogged because it always happens when I fly. Going up and down, and then my sinuses all get clogged, so forgive me for this nasally sound. Well, you've heard it before when I was sick, right? But this is just kind of a normal thing when I take a flight. But yeah, it's almost ending the week. Hope you really enjoyed the service last night. So let's get this day started together on the Morning Star Drive, and just remind everyone, even though it's going to be a little bit more comfortable and casual format today, it's probably going to be a little bit shorter too, but I hope we can get this day started together here on the Morning Star Drive. Everyone, please keep liking and commenting, and please especially comment more today, because I may not remember recording this because it's so late at night and I'm kind of half tired and half not tired. But I really want to hear from you guys and just tell me how you're doing. And if anything, hold me accountable. If this podcast is terrible, I'll give you my excuse that it was really late at night and I'm at the airport and there's no one here, whatever it is. But just want to let you know that I have an excuse already. But let me know if you're okay with today's podcast too. On Saturday also we have I believe it's a music video with the Sumney Boys. So go ahead and check that one out. And yeah, so here I am. I'm in San Francisco at the moment. It's like a 12-hour layover. And originally, my friend was going to pick me up. I'll go stay at his house, shower, and do everything there. But I ended up, basically, he has 4 kids. He just has a newborn. So, something came up with the kids, so he can't come pick me up. But that's okay. I came really late. I came around, I got out of the airport around 11 p.m. So I wouldn't want him to just pick me up at 11, drive an hour to his house, and then back at 5:30 a.m. drive back here. So I think it was better that he wasn't able to come anyways. But so I'm officially going to be at the airport overnight. I'll probably sleeping over here. Well, I'll find a nice sofa to sleep on, but a little bit nervous that people are going to steal my equipment and stuff like that too. Oh, but I did take a shower here. They have this little mini hotel type of place where you can sleep or take a shower. I just took a shower there. You know what? What's so crazy? I am totally on Malaysian, as someone wrote in my Instagram, I'm Malaysianized because everything is so expensive compared to Malaysia. I stopped off in Singapore first, right? And when I was in Singapore, I was just like, oh my gosh. And I'm a little bit hungry, so I got a sandwich and a latte, and it was like 20 Singapore dollars, which is roughly around like 15 US dollars. And if I were to buy those two same things in Malaysia, it probably would have been about $6-7 instead. So I was just like, man, it's so expensive here. I come over to San Francisco to take a shower. It's like $30 USD for 30 minutes in the shower. Yeah, they give you 30 minutes. And I was just like, wow, then that's like, you times that by 4.5, whatever it is. That's like 150 ringgit, right? Not even 150. Yeah, about 150 ringgit for like 30 minutes in the shower. I'm like, wow. I remember in Malaysia, you go to the airport and you have a sleeping pod for like 5 hours and it's like $20 US. But this is just a shower. So I am totally Malaysianized. It's so much cheaper there. But I'd have to say, it's far better to be clean and refreshed rather than just being dirty and like, oh, I don't want to spend the money. But I think it's worth it for me being here in the airport too. But so yeah, it is Question Answer Thursday. So I will answer 2 questions that come out today. The first question from Patreon is about the person said, continuing from my conversation I had the other day with my friend about leadership, how do you think leaders will be able to understand the shimdung of career members better? Which is a great question. And then the second question, also from someone who DM'd me and said, they're asking me, how are you going to deal with the Provi situation while you're at home? Because I'm heading over to my family right now, and they're asking, how are you going to deal with this? It's a good question because here I am giving advice to other people. How am I going to deal with it? I think that's a great question also. So those are a couple things that I will be thinking about. I will be answering today for the Question Answer Thursday. But like I said, today's going to be a little bit different format. It's going to be a lot more talking because I don't have all my stuff with me right now. So if I want some music, I'm going to have to download it myself anyways. So I'm going to just take a look and see what I can do with the music part. But I definitely will talk about the things I need to talk about, right? Well, here's something what happened on my flight, and I think this is kind of cool. My flight was 14 hours from Singapore to San Francisco. 14-hour flight, and honestly, sometimes it's taxing on your body just sitting there waiting. Just waiting for 14 hours to pass by. You watch some movies or whatever. It just gets boring. So I'm like, you know what? I got to sleep as much as I can. So, of course, I couldn't end up sleeping the entire 14 hours, but I slept a long time. I just woke up to eat or to watch 2 movies, and that's it. So I was trying my best to rest and just open my eyes. Once I wake up, I go back to sleep as I just want the time to pass as quickly as possible. But it was quite interesting. So I'm in the aisle seat, right? And, I'm trying to sleep constantly. And every once in a while, I would wake up. But here's the interesting thing. Every time I woke up, because I'm in the aisle seat and there's a middle seat and the window seat, right? Every time I woke up, one of them was missing. Like going to the bathroom or something. And think about this. Like you're sleeping the whole time. And every time you wake up, you see someone next to you is gone, right? And I'd be sitting there like, wait. My first thought was, how did they get out? Because I'm sleeping. They didn't wake me up to get out. Which means they probably quietly stepped over me. But since I was sleeping, I couldn't feel a thing. So, I was thinking to myself, like, man, when you sleep, you have no idea what is happening around you or to you, which is kind of scary too. And while I was thinking about that, kind of the inspiration came to my mind is it's kind of very similar to spiritual sleep. So what is spiritual sleep? Well, when you're asleep, you're no longer conscious of anything around you, right? But in the spiritual realm, if you're spiritually asleep, you're no longer conscious of the spiritual. So it's like hearing God, getting inspiration, motivation, feeling God, hearing His voice or whatever it is. And the issue is, for instance, when I want to sleep, I purposely close my eyes, right? Purposely close my eyes, and I'm pushing myself into a state of unconsciousness, right? And spiritually too, I thought, spiritually too, if you want to be spiritually asleep, one of the things you can do is purposely close your spiritual eyes. So you're no longer looking at the spiritual world. You close your spiritual ears and you decide not to be conscious to it. And you're conscious, when you're not conscious to something in the physical realm, it means your 5 senses are down. They're at a very, very low level of sensitivity. And in spiritual sleep, it's the same thing when your spiritual senses go down and you don't really hear, see, or feel anything. And, the one thing that I was thinking to myself is, well, the one thing better about sleep, only thing that's good about sleep is at least you're not dead, right? Because when you're dead, you can't feel anything. You can't hear or see anything. And I thought to myself, well, it's better to be asleep than dead. Because when you're dead, your senses don't work at all. But when you're asleep, your senses are just dulled, right? What does that mean? Well, put it this way. Someone can wake you up if they shout loud enough. So there's an extreme, extreme, what's that word? You give some type of extreme influence. I'm not sure what the right word is. You'll do something very extreme to one sense, like shout out loud, and then the person wakes up. Or when it comes to touch, they'll kick you or push your body to wake you up. Or with your eyes, even though your eyes are closed, you turn on like really bright lights and you can see it through your eyelids, and you wake up to that too. So you need something extreme to awaken your senses. And I think it's very, very similar when it comes to your spiritual senses too. When you're spiritually asleep, what happens is you need like an extreme, I don't know what the word is, extreme agitation or extreme, extreme like output in order for you to kind of like wake up to what's going on, right? And, I think that's what happens a lot of times. Like, I think this is what happened. My feeling is this is what happened when this whole chaos started, with like KJS and like that big leaders meeting and all that stuff we're hearing, the news, and, all started in March, right? With like Netflix and stuff. And when I looked at that, I was like going, hey, you know what? Maybe, because from that point on, a lot of people started to wake up, and a lot of people were like going, oh, wait, what's going on? And people would kind of be more sensitive to it, and people would start to gain conviction. People would start to defend. And I think this is what happens in Christianity too, because before, there's these times, like this is a story about me. In the past, I would be very fervent, like super into Jesus and everything else. But then sometimes you kind of go through a low valley and, you're not as Christian as you were before. But then all of a sudden someone starts to challenge Christianity and it wakes you up and you start defending it. Like, hey, how dare you say that about this, even though I was not even really into it at that moment. And I think that's my feeling is that a lot of people were spiritually asleep. And while they're spiritually asleep, what happened next was that people were spiritually asleep, and then this crazy, like, this chaos begins, all the accusations, and KJS says this and this, and the lawsuits, all this come out, and it just felt like so many people awakened to it. Now, of course, there were some other people who awakened to it in a negative way, but everyone kind of like came to their senses and says, hey, what the heck is going on right now? And for me, I was like going, yeah, like, it almost feels like that was kind of the situation where we're all, like, a lot of us were just asleep, kind of lulled to sleep by the pandemic, where we're watching things online. We're not probably as at our best as we were before. And then when this happened, it felt like everyone just came out of that slumber. And the great part that I looked at is a lot of people kind of received strength. As weird as that sounds, they received more conviction, like, how dare you say this about Providence, kind of thing. And I think that was kind of a cool thing to see, is that it reminds me of the story of the Tower of Babel. In the story of the Tower of Babel, the thing that was quite interesting was, what did it take for the people? The story is like the flood came, and the flood rose to such a high level, right? And when Sussex talks about the flood, he says the result of the flood was the Tower of Babel, right? When you have ungodly people coming out of the Tower of Babel, coming out of the flood. So the flood came, swept everyone away, right? And then what happens after is these people who are still ungodly and unrighteous, they think to themselves, oh my gosh, if another flood comes, we got to be ready for it. So let's build a tower so that the next flood will not, instead of us all dying, we'll just go to the top of the tower and we'll all be saved, which is more of a sign of people who don't want God still. Because, the people who are godly would say, you know what, we got to come back to God, we got to pray so that the flood doesn't happen again. But the people who are more physical will say, oh, we just need to build a tower that's higher than what was supposed to, then the waters will rise, and then we'll all be saved. So it's a trusting of themselves more than a trusting of God. But one thing that Sunseem did talk about that story was, he said, after the flood, it's like a great judgment and great calamity. Right? And when that great calamity comes, it brings people together. It's like always the extremes bring people together. Example is the Olympics. When your country wins like the Olympics or something like that, gets a gold medal, then everyone is ecstatic. No one cares about the fights you're having with each other, and you're just happy. It brings unity because you won the World Cup. Argentina is more won now because they won the World Cup. Everyone's cheering. No one thinks about the fights and all the differences that they have, and they're just celebrating in like just jubilee, right? But on the flip side, it's the same thing. If something really, really bad happens, everyone comes together because there's something worse or something better than what's happening in their life. So when big calamity happens, like there's war and there's fighting and people are dying, then your problems seem way too small. right? And because your problems seem way too small, it brings you together. It's like, hey, I know that we're fighting about this, but now we gotta save these people who are stuck under the rubble because of the earthquake, right? So unity is brought together through extreme good and extreme bad. And what happened was, because of the flood, it was an extreme bad. What did they do? They decided to come together and say, hey, we don't ever want this to happen again, so let's build a tower together, right? So when you look at this, just even our situation right now, the judgment that's happening right now, it actually also brings people together. And that's why, we're going to see more and more people, like, all of a sudden after that happening, after the happenstance with KJS and what's happening internally in Providence, this podcast has tripled to almost quadrupled in like viewership and everything else from both platforms combined, right? Like before, we're looking at maybe combined of YouTube and SoundCloud was like 200, maybe 200. And now we're hitting like 400, over 400 in some of them too. So it's very, very interesting. I think it's even more than that, right? So when I look at this, I say, yeah, because something very, very extreme has happened. This is why it's bringing more and more people together. This is why, even now, it's bringing people that were not as active coming together and saying, oh, I just saw this. We got to come together. We got to pray for this and stuff like that too. So when I looked at that, I was like going, wow, it's quite interesting. Like this realization came all about from me falling asleep, trying to sleep in the airplane and just constantly noticing that the people were missing. And I had no idea that they stepped over me to go to the bathroom. And I wouldn't even be surprised if they tried to wake me up, but I didn't wake up. Like I wouldn't be surprised by that. So like it's quite interesting that I was thinking about all these things just from that one moment that happened in the airplane. Either way, so yeah, so that's just something that I wanted to talk to you guys, see what you guys thought about this. So you guys can leave a comment below. Would love to hear what you guys think about this also. And it's quite interesting now that I'm in this situation with not having all my equipment but just recording. It makes me think about, could this be a newer format I can use for my podcast where I don't have to do all the different things that I had before? Like there's some music now I can kind of download here and there, but I may not have access to all of them. So, I might just download one of the songs and put it in and then go to the next song. So either way, that's kind of my first thoughts for today. I hope it's something that it helps you guys to think more. I think I'll do a quick music break and then we'll go into the Q&A Thursday. Oh, maybe it's Q&A Thursday and then some more thoughts and then we can end it off there too. But I'm not sure yet, but I hope that we can have a really, really fun time. Kind of like those podcasts you listen to on YouTube where there's just a lot of talking, a lot of thought-provoking things. And even for the future, I would rather sit down with someone and have a conversation when it comes to a conversation of two minds coming together, thinking, and their thoughts on what is happening. Either way, so let's go into a quick music break.
It's 1,000-year history, right? We belong together, you and I. And you're always gonna hold me tight. Whoa, whoa. You're my groom and I am your bride. And my spirit's lifted up so high. It's the wedding banquet of all time. And you'll hear me sing, bridegroom, 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 I love you, I love you, I love you. And I'll hear you say, beautiful bride, I love you, I love you too, I love you. Count the stars in the sky tonight, let your love lighten up the sky. Countless blessings, how your heart just shines. Whoa, 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 whoa. Promise always to be by your side. living with you in my daily life. We're a team that you can't deny. Oh, oh, oh. Bridegroom, 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 I love you. I love you. I love you. And I'll hear you say, beautiful bride, I love you. Love you too. I love you. Now let me say, you, my eternal loving bridegroom. Me, can't help clinging onto you. Me and you, nothing can replace my love for you. Bridegroom, bridegroom, how I love you. Bridegroom, bridegroom, how I love you. Bridegroom, bridegroom, how you love me too. It's 1,000-year history ride. We belong together, you and I. It's the greatest history of all time.
And that was a brand new song. Oh, that's the latest song that came out on, the Providence Music Source over there on the YouTube channel. And I haven't checked it in a while, so, it's kind of my bad. I have like 2 or 3 songs that I haven't actually uploaded or I haven't downloaded from that channel. But I have 3 new songs now that I just downloaded right now since I don't have my hard drive with me with all the other different songs. But I think that's these 3 songs that have come out onto the new YouTube channel for English music. I hope that you guys really, really enjoyed that. All right. So like I said, it's going to be a brand new format today only because I don't have all my equipment. And, I don't know. This could be something new for the future where we can continue to talk and talk about the things that that matter to us and maybe take out the things that don't matter as much. Because I'm sure many people, as they've told me multiple times, they don't even listen to the sports section. Yes, I heard you guys. And I haven't got anything from any of the guys saying, "Oh, we love the sports section." So I don't know. I'll give you guys I'll give the guys or the people who listen to the sports section a little bit more time to see if they can respond to it or not. But let me go into the Q&A Thursday. So we got 2 questions today, and of course I enjoy this Q&A Thursday. This first one comes from Patreon, and it says, all right, you can hear that, right? Yeah. So you know that I'm at the airport because you can hear the announcement that do not leave your bags unattended. And if there is unattended bags, call 911. Yep. So there's proof, guys. I am literally in the airport right now. If you look at my Instagram, I did take a picture of what my setup looks like. I'm alone in this one section where people usually eat, but everything's closed. But you heard it. You heard the announcement, which is kind of cool. It gives it more like authenticity that I am traveling around doing this podcast too. So this question to Patreon is, continuing from your conversation you had with your other friend about leadership, how do you think leaders will be able to understand the shimjung of career members better? All right. So this is a very interesting question because like I had a deep conversation on this. Like, how will leaders be able to understand the shimjung of these career people? And I was thinking to myself, like in my head, I was thinking to myself, oh, what are the different things we can do? But my friend was saying basically like, oh, you're gonna have to wait for this generation to die. You know, wait for them to die off, and then the new generation will understand. And I was like, no, I think that'll be too late because that's going to be like 10, 15, 20 years down the road. I think one thing that is necessary is especially if you're thinking about going into Providence leadership, I do think one thing that is probably a necessity for people to understand the lives of a career department is to actually have a full-time job for like a year or 2, right? Or at least a part-time. Well, I think full-time would be better to understand it much more deeply, but to understand the full shimjung, I think I think leaders should kind of in their prerequisite, whether they're younger or they're just coming out of university, like spend some time doing full-time work. Now, myself, I did full-time once, but it only lasted 3 months because my company eventually moved to another city, but it was really extreme when I was working. I was working 6 days a week, Monday to Saturday, and it was 11 hours a day. That's including including my, the travel. Took me about 45 minutes to get there, 45 minutes to get back. So you take an hour and a half out of 11 hours, which means I was working 9.5 hours a day, Monday to Saturday, right? And I was making pretty good money. Like for someone at that age, I think how old was I was just like maybe two years, no, not even 2 years. It was just right after I got out of university, right? And I ended university really late. I ended it when I was 24. That's when I graduated. But I came right out of university and I had this job and it was crazy. So my routine was wake up for pre-dawn, come back from pre-dawn, eat breakfast, and then I head straight to work. And then at work, and you spend, you're at time, and then you go out into the field and you're doing marketing, direct marketing sales. And then you come back home. I didn't come directly back home. I'd go straight to church. I'd be lecturing and doing other stuff like that. I finish around 10, then go back home, do the same thing over and over again, right? So I was doing that 6 days a week for 3 months. So I think if it's, if I'm doing 66 hours a week, what's 66 hours a week for 3 months? So 3 months is what, 13? Well, it's supposed to be 12, but it's more than that. It's probably like 13 weeks. 13 times 66 equals 858 hours, right? And if I divide that by, most people have a 40-hour week, right? That means instead of, you'd be equivalent for me working for 21 and a half weeks, right? And 21 and a half weeks, that's like 6 months. Like I did basically double the time. I almost did double the time, almost 6 months of work in 3 months. But it was brutal. And even then, it wasn't enough for me to realize deeply about the career department. And it was just too short for me because 3 months, doing that crazy schedule. And then I was preaching on Sundays and stuff. But I do think one of the first things that we could do is maybe those who really want to be full-time in Providence, they should think about, when they're younger to start, doing some type of work, right? And that might seem counterproductive because you'd be like, well, but then don't they need to focus on the spiritual? And technically speaking, I think you still have enough time to do it. And, that brings me into another situation that I think is, like, we could talk about this later, is people who are running full-time, are they really running full-time? Like, is it real full-time work? Like full-time running for Providence? Like you're doing the 8 hours, you're lecturing, you're bettering yourself, you're bettering your lecturing, you're bettering your Bible knowledge or all these other different things. How many people who are actually real full-time Providence runners are actually running for the full, like a real full-time job? And personally, I would say probably close to zero. That's my feeling of what I've seen when it comes to full-time. There's so much dead time. When you're running full-time. And that's why, for me, I'm like, when will they finally realize, right? And I think in order for leaders to realize more deeply about the shifting of career members, number one is I do think they should go to work, right? And number two is, I think this is probably one of the big things, because this is what I was like before, is, my mind is so extreme because, number one, my life was given to God. But, they got to think, I got to think, when I think logically about this, it makes no sense that I thought this way, that, everyone should be giving everything up for God. And the answer is, technically, yes. Everyone should be giving up everything for God, like their hearts, their thoughts, and all these other different, I'm going to give my life to Christ. But even if you give your life to Christ, it doesn't mean you stop working. It doesn't mean you stop, you start neglecting your children and going out to evangelize, because that assumption is that the only way to give up your life for God is by throwing everything away and just going on campus and evangelizing and lecturing or something. And then we know that's not true. That is not the way to give up everything. That's not the meaning of giving everything up for God. It all depends on your area, right? Because most importantly, the biggest thing that matters is the faith, right? It's about the faith and your thoughts, what you think about God, how much you want to change, and changing your life while you're talking, right? It's not while you're talking. It's changing your life while you're in the midst of your daily life. Right? Becoming that shining light, becoming that person that people look at and say, this person's different, this person's a godly person, this person's a righteous person. It's got to go far beyond just, you want to give up your life for Christ? Okay, then, stop your job and just run and go on campus. And I think this is one of the perceptions that has to change when it comes to leadership is that the only thing that matters is evangelism. That's the number one thing. And the answer is, I don't think so. I completely disagree with that. I do think it's one of the most important things, but it's like this growth in evangelism. Sometimes he also talks about evangelizing yourself, or the internal growth too. So I think the leaders have to kind of get out of their minds. And like I'm saying, I'm just as guilty of this because I saw myself like this before. You'd be pushing people so hard to live like someone who's running full time. And the answer is no, not everyone's going to run full time. We have to be able to establish borders, right? Like a family person, someone who's got like 3 kids or 2 kids or even 1 kid, it takes a lot of energy. That person you have to think carefully about that. How much time do they have? Can they go out to campus? No, they have a baby. Right? What about someone who's working full-time 8 hours a day? Can they do the same things as someone who's running full-time or someone who's campus? And I'm going to be honest with you guys, if you are in campus out there listening to this podcast right now, we got to be honest with ourselves, because I was in campus too. We have a ton of time. And when we say I got to study, you usually use it as an excuse, or it's only real when it's like exam times. There's very few campus I know that are actually really, really studying like constantly. Like there's very, very few, unless you're trying to be a lawyer or something like at the super, where you need like crazy grades. But in most cases, if you look at most campus, what are they doing? They're not spending their time studying. They're making TikTok videos, like they're taking tons of pictures everywhere they go. So everyone has time in campus. This is why one of the things when in the past, some people said that the people who are the busiest are a career and above. Everyone below career is not as busy. You're not going to be as busy going out doing those things. But it's the people from career, you have to be at your job. You have no choice, or else you lose your job. You can't make money to make a living. And it's the people from career and up who understand the value of time, because there's not enough of it. Where full-timers and people who are, not running full-time and they're on campus and doing all these other different things, I'm not going to say all, but the majority will not value time as much as the people who are like, I have to use this time for work in this. Because how valuable is that time for someone in career? Because I know someone, when I was at the Lord's Church before, they're working full time, and then they'd come after work at like 7:30 p.m. to go teach someone. And that's someone who is really sacrificing time for this history. Because they don't have enough. They've been working all day, right? That's all the time they have. And, there's got to be this switch that flips in the mind that probably needs a lot of education. And this education for leaders should be about career department and families and understanding what their capabilities in their area is, right? So some people might say, like, I remember having this conversation several weeks ago about families, is like, well, how does a family, run for this history? And honestly, they're running for this history by raising a family. One of the most important things we have to realize and recognize for these families that are raising children is the next generation. They cannot neglect them. They need to love them and educate them and train them, not train them, but bring them up as godly people so that they can be the next generation. And this is how important like the SS and the Milky Ways are, and we have to make sure there's a big focus on them also. So how can they understand the Shimjung? Number one, they can try living the same life, and you'll realize about how hard it is to be in career or having a family. And secondly, there's got to be more education out there where even you can say that, having discussion, like for instance, if I was a head leader, I think right now, one of the things I would discuss is talking to like Blessed Family, JS, and the career department leaders, and just having honest conversations of, what are you capable of doing in your area, in your realm, right? And how we're able to support career, because we're not going to be sitting here saying that, oh, career is busy, so they don't have to do anything. We're not saying that either, right? We're not saying that. Everyone has, like when I go to a Christian church, working people are still very active. like really active. They are running cell groups. They are, they are volunteering for church as ushers and they're at the sign-up booth and at the cafe. Like they're doing so many other things there for the church too, right? But I think it's less burdensome, right? And it's less burdensome for these people if they're not expected to, like, hey, why aren't you going on campus? Hey, why aren't you lecturing? Why aren't you doing this? And I do think if there's too much burden put onto those departments, then they won't even come to the regular things, right? If there's too much put on them. Yeah, like if there's not there's a basic part of being a member. And the basic part of being a member is like services. You got the morning services, you got the Sunday and the Wednesdays. Like that's just basics. Right? That's just basics for you being part of the community. And that's not something that, that should be, you can't negotiate with those types of things like, well, do I really have to? But what if I do this? Then can I not do this? No, it's nothing like that. Right? And I think there's something else that's missing just in Providence in general is that the general attitude of giving to the church or serving the church. I go to a Christian church and there are lineups of people wanting to serve and volunteer. There is a list of people who are waiting to serve. They can't wait to serve. And in Providence, I don't see that. I don't see lineups of people, oh, what can I do for the church? What can I do for the church? I just don't see that. Right? There's a feeling that's a little bit different. What I see in Providence right now is it feels almost more obligation and a duty and a job more than, hey, it's like this is free will and would you like to serve? Oh, I would love to do that. I would love to do something for God kind of thing, right? And I think that's part of the things that we have to change within the culture. Right? How will leaders be able to understand the shifting of crew members? I think there's a lot of different things that have to happen, but it has to start somewhere, right? And that's why, personally, I think some of them may have to start working, start working in a job, right? Maybe for a year or so they can understand what it means to work and then still do church work and stuff. And when they do that, they'll be like, oh, this is how difficult it is. I understand this much better. I think there has to be education, a shifting of perceptions, which is all going to be part of it. If you guys hear some like stuff in the background right now, it's because it's like 2:20 in the morning and they're trying to wax the floors. So they're cleaning all around me. So if you hear that, I want to let you know that that's what's going on. But either way, so I think it's a great question, but I do think it's got to be more to do with a cultural shift, right? We do need to change the culture in this history. And I think it's going to be quite normal too. I think cultural shifts and scaling the church is a very, very big thing, okay? The second question for today's Q&A Thursday, this is a personal DM. Someone's asking me about how am I going to deal with the Provi situation, like the chaos that's happening right now, while I am at home. Now I'm going home right now, and how am I going to deal with it? And I think this is a very, very, you can hear it, right? This guy's right behind me cleaning. Oh, sorry, that was a total misgendering I did. It's a woman doing it, right? She's on the machine. But either way, so, I think this is a good question. And, it has to do with me too, giving advice on it. Am I someone who just says it, or am I someone, do I have hypocrisy within me that I can tell you guys a certain way to do it, but I'm not doing it myself? Or like, well, how do I actually deal with this? And for myself it's very, very interesting because, I have dealt with this already very early. Like when I was 25 and I was living in Vancouver right after I moved back from America, I did deal with this because there came up a situation that I'm not very proud of. Basically, I was more like, I don't want, I was going on a trip to Hong Kong for like a Providence trip and go visit the place that seemed clean, that waterfall place and stuff like that. And, I was going to go, and I'm still working at that time too. And my parents are really proud of me that I was working at that job, 6 days a week, 11 hours a day, that kind of thing. And what happened was I didn't know how to tell my parents because they didn't know about Providence, right? And I basically told them that, I'm just going to go on a work trip, but I ended up going to Hong Kong. And one thing led to another, and one of my mom's friends actually works at the international airport, and I told her that I'm going somewhere domestic, but I waved to my mom's friend who's working international. And then, she told my mom that, oh, he's at the international. And she's like, what is going on? And then she's like, why did you lie to me? And I was like, oh, I just didn't think it was important. And then from that point on at 25, I said, Mom, let me just be honest with you. I'm going to be honest with you. It's for church. It's for this. And my mom's like, okay. And she just said, I don't care what you do. You're old. You're not old. You're old enough. You're 25. You're an adult. It's just don't lie. And I was like, that's so true, Mom. I just, I don't know what I was thinking. I was just kind of scared how you'd react. She's like, no. So from that point on, we were pretty honest with it. And then there's a second situation that happened in my family where basically I did evangelize four or five people, like 4 cousins plus my brother into Providence. And then all four or 5 of them left. They all left, right? And it caused such a huge shakeup in the family. So when I talk to my parents about it, they're like, hey, you're old enough. You can do what you want and we trust you. Just, when it comes to like this religious stuff, just don't touch the family on it. So me and my parents are very open and honest about it. I'll tell them when I'm going on for missions trip. I'll tell them when I'm doing a Providence thing every single time. So there is that trust there. And we rarely ever talk about it. Rarely. We rarely talk about what is happening and what is going on. So even that, we're like, okay. So even for me, I think I have dealt with it from an early age at 25 and just made sure I was open and honest with my parents. And, in the beginning, it was tough. It was tough. But as we went on with it, it became something that was kind of normal and easy. Like there was just only like one time because we already agreed on this. And then one time, like, after this, having, discussed and talked about this, and, we decide just not to bring it up in the open and stuff, right? And whatever happens, they trust me. They're not going to, like, come against me and say all this bad stuff, right? But they just don't want the family to get involved and all of a sudden become such a terrible situation because, that ruins the family, right? So this one time my dad actually started playing slander on YouTube while I was in the room, even after we talked about this stuff. And it just made me so upset that I was like, I'm leaving. I'm leaving right now. And the funny thing was, I was so mad. Like, I threw my chair on the ground and I said, forget this. And I left, right? And I left my house, but I have nowhere to go. So I ended up going back to my house. And I thought to myself, I got to be more dramatic. I got to start packing my bags. So I go to pack my bags. My mom's like, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Da, 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 right? And I was like, why would you even play that kind of thing, right? And then my dad walked in and he hugged me and he said he was sorry. And he said he loved me. And I've never heard him say that until that point in my life. And that, and I was so moved by it that I was like, oh, and I was so happy too because I didn't know where I was going to go if I packed my bags anyways, right? So my dad was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And so at that point, we're pretty honest with each other on these things. And even when my mom brings stuff up, I'll tell her a couple certain things. Sometimes we'll go hiking together. She'll ask me about Sunseam, but in a very calm and not like judging way. And we'll just talk about it for a little bit, and that's it. It's done. So I think the one thing I've probably learned from is 2 things that I did for sure to gain trust from my parents is, number one is I'm super honest with them, right? And I'm not saying that everyone is going to be in the right position to do it, but for me is I found that being honest is a good thing. Like being honest and open about it, even though sometimes it's a little bit scary. Yeah, because we don't know how our parents are going to react. We think to ourselves. I did it very, very early. And it was difficult in the beginning, but eventually it became something where we can discuss and we're like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool kind of thing. And we'd talk about it. And I thought that was something that, I think that's something that, people should be thinking about also. Like, no matter what, you'll never get to a position where when you tell someone like, oh, I'm in Providence, stuff like that for the very first time, because they love you and because they're worried, they're going to have an emotional reaction in the beginning. And I think that's going to be normal. No matter what, whenever you say it, it's going to happen. It's going to happen no matter what. But there's going to be a big difference of whether you've been hiding it for 30 years or hiding it for like 5 years. There's a big difference. Like, you've been lying to me for 30 years or something like that, right? Eventually you have to realize we're adults. At 25, I was an adult. 25, 26, I was an adult. Right now, I'm over 40 years old. And I'd say the second thing that really helped me out was from 27 years old, 2005. Yeah, from 27 years old when I started to pioneer churches out, in other countries. I went to England, right? From 27, I never took a dollar from my parents. Never asked for it, and I just lived on my own. And that is one thing that sometimes parents hold over us. If they're constantly supporting you financially, they do have a say in your life. Why? Because you're not independent. You can't say you're independent and take money from your parents. I think that's a contradiction. You cannot say, I can do what I want because I'm an adult. But if you're an adult, you're responsible for yourself, and you're not taking any money from your parents. If you're still taking money from your parents, you're not independent, and you're not responsible for yourself. It's only when you reach that level is when you become responsible. Only when you reach that level, you can live your life without anyone else supporting you. And when I did this, and for 17 years, from 2005, when I was 27, all the way until 2000, until now, I still don't take money from my parents. They'll buy me gifts. Funny thing is, they'll buy me more stuff now since I'm independent, right? But after I really became independent, didn't take any money, lived on my own, parents can't say anything. They just can't. I'm no longer dependent upon them, right? It's a different relationship where I'm now an adult. And that's something that I do think a lot of people have to think about in the future is, if you keep living at your parents' house, if you when you're a full-grown adult, if you keep living at their house, you keep taking money from them, that's going to be their power they hold over you. And when you can't say, this is my life, I'll do what I want. You can't say that if you're taking money and you're under their roof. The only time you're free is when you're fully independent. You're outside of the house, you make your own money, you don't take anything from them. And you visit them and you buy them gifts and stuff. That's where you become an adult. And that's why one of the reasons, after 17 years of not really being home, last year, when I was there for 10 months, I just kept buying my parents presents. Because I was like, hey, I'm independent. It's not like I'm poor. I can still buy you gifts. I've saved money. And this makes them feel even more comfortable. So, I deal with it. I've dealt with this for the past 15, 20 years. And I dealt with it from a very, very young age. Now, you and I, a lot of you out there who are listening, are probably a lot younger than I am and may still be dependent because you're younger, right? You're still in university or just starting your work and stuff like that. And you're going to be at a different stage. But I want to let you know that this started a lot earlier for me, from when I was 25, 26. Well, 27 years old. At 27, I moved out independently, didn't take any money, and I was on my own. And sometimes we need to do that to show our parents that we're mature enough, right? That I can handle myself. So, I've dealt with this situation, and I don't see any massive changes happening when I go back. But if there are, I will talk about it with you guys. As you can see, every time I talk to you on my podcast, I do talk about the things that I'm going through, right? I talk about those things, say, hey, this is what I'm going through. This is what's happening here. This is what's happening here. And, that's why I'm trying to be as transparent and honest as I can, so that you guys can kind of see through the lens of my life. Right. And, I'm kind of I'm not literally what you're going to be like, but it's just, that's what the future holds for people in Providence. We have a similar path. Right. So I tell you what I'm going through, and you'll be able to learn from it and say, oh, I don't want to have the same mistakes as Pastor Sky. Right. And that's kind of one of the reasons I like to share a lot of these different things like that too. Okay. So there it is, guys. That's Question and Answer Thursday. Hope you guys enjoyed that. We're going to have another quick music break, and I'm going to play another song that I haven't, I just started checking that Providence YouTube channel again, and there's 3 songs I haven't played. This one I really like is I Will Remember, and I hope you guys will like this.
Stories you and I have shared, like photographs, they're clear in my mind. I will remember those times we dreams that we have hoped for until now, the will that we have kept without a doubt, they become my soul's melody, the beautiful song my spirit sings, the days when we took action side by side, the blessings that have now become all mine. I will live eternally, recalling those moments vividly. La 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 la, la 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 la. La 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 la, la 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 la. I will remember forever and more. Now because of you, I can live without worry or shame, for my whole life has changed. The dreams that we have hoped for until now, the will that we have kept without a doubt, they become my soul's melody, the beautiful song my spirit sings, the days when we took action side by side, the blessings that have now become all mine. I will live eternally, recalling those moments vividly. Dreams that we have hoped for until now, the will that we have kept without a doubt, they become my soul's melody, the beautiful song my spirit sings, the days when we took action side by side, the blessings that have now become all mine. I will live eternally, recalling those moments vividly. La 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 la, la 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 la. La 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 la, la 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 la. I will remember forever and more. La 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 la, la 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 la. La 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 la, la 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 la. I will remember forever and more.
And what a great song that is, I Will Remember. And I hope something that inspires and moves your heart too. So we're going to get to the last section for today. And today I wanted to finish off. You know, this is totally off of what my normal programming is. And I'm talking awfully a lot. I don't know what it is. I might just shooting the breeze, but you know, I'm in the San Francisco airport. It's a very odd situation for me, and I'm just doing what I'm going off the cuff. I have a couple topics I really want to talk about, and I hope you guys enjoy this style of a podcast too. And I do think that this would actually work better if I had someone else on my podcast together, just kind of shooting back and forth. That's just my feeling. Like this would be a better way of having this podcast too. But either way, so this last section I'm going to talk about is kind of what my realization from my entire 6 months in Malaysia was. Like, remember, I was telling you that I realized, oh, this is why I'm here. Oh, this is why I went to Malaysia for 6 months. It's to avoid being in the eye of the storm with all this chaos and craziness. And I was able to really think about like deeply, reasonably, rationally about the full situation, and kind of give more like better thoughts, right? Because it was peace and quiet in Malaysia, and it allowed me to make this podcast more objective and more like looking at the evidence more objectively also. Right, so that's something that I was like, oh, that's a very interesting thing. But it's very interesting because when you look in the world, a lot of the times they talk about purpose and meaning, right? Oh, you need to have a purpose. You have to have something you're running towards. And I realize that in the history of God, it's very difficult sometimes because you won't even know what the purpose is until later. Like even for me, I'm like thinking, what am I doing in Malaysia for 6 months? And I don't have my own place, and I'm always relying on people, and I'm always out. Don't have I'm not cooking my own. It was just very, very like, what am I doing here? And only later, when it's ending, I'm realizing, this is why God sent me here. And because God sent me here with this reason in mind, then all of a sudden my last 6 months become meaningful. But during the 6 months, I'm trying to figure out, what am I doing here, kind of thing, right? And I think this is one of the tough parts about being in God's history is we're not going to know every single thing that's going to be there, right? And if you did, like sometimes if you do know the reason why you're there, then it'll take away from the honest experience. You know what I mean? Like if you already know it, God's like going, I want you to think more deeply and I want you to help a lot more people when it comes to this podcast, then all of a sudden I'm just trying to fit that mold. And in the process of trying to fit that mold, I'm not going to be as honest as I was before, where I'm talking about all the other different things I want to talk about too. You know what I mean? Like sometimes sometimes it's better not to know because you become more honest and you begin to talk about the things you want to talk about, rather than having a certain purpose in mind and that's the only thing. Like remember I talked about evangelism. If your whole goal is to evangelize someone, the moment they say I don't want to study, you stop hanging out with them. Right? And it's like, well, your purpose overtakes everything else, and to the point where you don't even care about someone's feelings or their thoughts. And once they say they don't want to come to Providence, or they don't believe, they don't want to study, then you kind of leave them alone, you drop out, which I think is not a very loving way, like the way we're called to. And in the same way too, sometimes I think for us, it's better for us not to know. Sometimes it's better for us not to know our future. Because like imagine if my future is, this podcast is going to do this, and this. And then all of a sudden I become lazy because I think, this is just going to happen because God says it's going to happen. But the reality is the podcast cannot be a good place if I already know it's going to be like, it's going to pop off in March kind of thing, right? Like maybe, what if I was more into, like, what if I stayed in Canada and I was in the middle of everything, and then I stopped doing podcasting? That could happen too, right? And it for me, I was just thinking to myself, I was like, wow, God, that seems like such a big risk. That you inspired me to go to Malaysia, and I bought the ticket on the spot. And I'm like, but God, what would happen if I didn't buy that ticket? What if I didn't listen to the inspiration? What would happen there? Like there would just be a completely different path. And I was thinking to myself wow, in the world you do the things, most of the times you're looking for, you already have the purpose, and the purpose gives the meaning, right? But when you're in God's history, one of the things that is called bigger than to understand why you're there, it is to trust in God. You know what I mean? Like you're not there, you're not there because it's like, my goal is this. No. Because sometimes in God's history, we're not going to know the future. We're not going to know what he actually wants. And because of that, what's going to happen? And because of that, the only thing we can do is trust in God. I don't know the future, right? We don't. And sometimes if God tells us our future, it makes us lazy, and it makes us want to give up, right? So if you think about that, it's like, wow, if I knew that the future was going to be something successful, then I might become lazy. Or if I knew it was going to fail, then I would quit even before, and I would lose all that valuable experience in that failure. Because if you think about it, even when you fail, you're learning something from it. Oh man, I shouldn't have done this. And it's something that helps you for your next success. Right? Your next big success is going to be built upon many different failures, but the lessons you learn from it. And if we know the future, we may miss out on those failures, because no one wants to fail. And you miss out on those failures and you're like, how come, and then you're going to make the mistakes that you didn't make during the failure, but you'll do it in the time when you're supposed to be successful. And, I think one of the big lessons we got to learn is we got to trust God. If God sees much further than we do. His eyesight is like an eagle. He sees 2 miles ahead, where human beings, what do we see? Like 100 meters? So he sees like 20 times, no more than that, like 30 times more than us, like 30 times longer down the road. And when we understand the difference between how far we see and God sees, this is when we are going to have a more successful future. I do not know what's ahead of me, but I trust God. And because of that trust in God, I will be able to continue to be successful in this history also, right? So that's something that I thought was quite interesting, and I hope it's something that all of us can really take home with us. It's been an interesting podcast today. We've gone for, surprisingly, over an hour. Hope you guys really enjoyed it, and I hope that everyone's going to have an awesome and amazing Thursday. And just, be honest. Tell me what you think about this type of format for a podcast, because I don't know if I could do this every day because it's a lot of talking and there's a lot of things that I have to think about. But you guys can tell me what you guys think about this style also. And I'm going to honestly consider making a bigger change to the podcast for the future too. Maybe add in an extra person to talk to them about it too. Either way. So there it is, guys. That is the end of today's Thursday podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Have an amazing and awesome day. And tomorrow, even better. Why? Because it's Friday. All right, everyone. Take care. And we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with this